Thank you so much, Kevin. I'm Deborah Marshall, and this is my co-presenter, Callie.
Hello, everybody. So nice to be here today.
We are delighted to be part of this roundtable. We wish we were there in person with everyone, but we do recognize this new way of communicating, and we're thrilled with that. Before we get started, there's something that I would love to ask of you, and that is that treat this like sacred space. You know, interruptions come and go throughout our day, and you have set aside some time for this very important session. And so try to get away from all the distractions and join us fully. And just give yourself some of that sacred space so that you can really fully enjoy what we're going to be talking about today. So Callie, let's get underway.
So we are going to head and share our slides with you guys, and then what we are going to do is actually turn our camera off so that we are not just a talking head while we're presenting. So I'm going to stop our video now, and can you guys see our slides? We're good? Awesome.
Thank you. So today is about the perfect pivot. We have heard that word pivot, pivot, pivot in 2020. I think it's going to be the word of the century. But what's the deal with the pivot? You know, as I was thinking about being with you today, I was thinking about when I was in high school and I played basketball. And I was a guard because I'm too short to be a forward. And one of the things that we had to do was to learn how to pivot. And a pivot is when you actually turn on your heels and your toes and you go 180 degrees in the opposite direction. It's not very pretty, quite honestly. Sometimes you're fighting your way through it because somebody is trying to steal the ball from you. And I will tell you that some of the pivots that have occurred since we have had to endure COVID have not been very pretty. And I will tell you that the truth of the matter is I would certainly rather it be a pirouette instead of a pivot. But the reality is sometimes those pirouettes, as smooth and beautiful as they can be, are not our reality. So today we're going to talk about pivoting and how we move into the smoothness of a pirouette. And specifically today, we're going to talk about the distinctive difference in a virtual and an in-person event, because there really, really are differences. So let's just dive right in. Callie, when you and I have worked together on virtual event planning, you know as well as I do that we have to dive in and really set the framework for what is next. So the first thing that we talk about is who. Who do you want to reach? You as a nonprofit organization had your list of donors, your volunteers, and all those that you serve. That's your who. You also want to talk about what do you want them to do? Certainly we want them to donate. We want them to spread the word. We want them to give feedback, and we want them to receive services. And then when do you need engagement? That's the time frame for this. And we're going to talk about with some tools how you do that. It might be an evening, it might be an hour, it might be during a period of a week. So all of those things lead up to that important virtual event planning. And where do you want their attention? Whether it's going to be on a live stream, an auction site, or a telethon. And I will tell you that there are so many different organizations that are coming out with a variety of platforms, and they've got really cutesy-tootsy names, and you may not even know what they do or why they do it or how much they cost. And all of those are critical to your virtual event planning. Know what you need, what is unique to your organization, and what will support you the best. And then at the bottom is the why. So why the why? Every organization on this planet knows what they do. These are the products that they sell or the services that they offer. Some organizations know how they do it. These are the things that make them special or set them apart from their competition. Did you know that very few organizations know why they do what they do? And I will tell you right out of the gate, why is not about making money. That's a result. It's a purpose, a cause, or a belief. It's the very reason your organization exists. In order to inspire others, we have to think, act, and communicate, starting with why, especially during a pivot. So the why becomes your story. And why a story? Well, guess what? All decisions are emotion-based and logic-supported. In the corner of this slide, you see the brain, neocortex system and the limbic system. And I will tell you in the limbic system that the why is right at the center of the decision-making process. Because in order to have a powerful story, whether it's for your staff, your board members, or your patrons, you need a point of connection. And it's all beyond just data. So the limbic section of the brain is where the why occurs. So you need to begin to develop that why. And how do you do that? Well, you start with building your story. What do you do? What do you do? You know, many of you are helping to feed children and families. Some of you are working with rescuing animals, some with disease-specific assistance to others, even teaching children how to read. Well, that's what you do. And then you go into how do you do it? Well, sometimes it's educationally, sometimes it's through direct services, but you know how you do what you do best. Why do you do it? So that gets to the why. Well, you do it to save lives, or, you know, for us, for AmFund, we do it to provide education, like today, to hundreds of nonprofit organizations. And beyond that, to offer funding to nonprofits so that they can achieve their cause and create the answer to their why. Your organization is unique in what you do. And that why, we will talk about it even more as we go into more about how to plan your virtual event. But before we do that, Callie, talk to us about an internal pivot that occurs with organizations.
Oh, absolutely, Deborah. So once you have your why, and just the why of your mission, the why of what you do on a day-to-day, but even more looking at your pivot. Look at why are you pivoting and how are you pivoting? So those are really important conversations to have internally first. So you really want to communicate your why to your entire team. You want to make sure you involve staff in the strategy sessions behind your organizational pivot so that you get their buy-in. And you have to remember now, each group of people or individuals, we will have their own unique whys as to why they were drawn to your organization in the first place. Staff may have their own unique stories. Board members may have a specific why they support your organization. The same with sponsors and your patrons. So really, you have to start with identifying the why internally, getting your staff, volunteers, your internal team on board before you jump to the external. So again, we walk before we run, and Deborah said it best earlier. Do you really want this to be a pivot, or do you want it to be a grand pirouette? So again, start internally, get your team on board with your why, and then you'll have your grand pirouette. So as part of that, you have to put in some training, right? We can't just assume, okay, everybody's on the same page, everybody's going to communicate the exact same way. Your staff, volunteers, board members, sponsors, all of these individuals out in the community act as megaphones on their personal outlets. So you really want to invest the time to provide additional training to ensure everyone can communicate your organization's why, especially during a pivot. And I must say, Deborah's done a great job with our team. We do this quite often, have all staff sessions and come together and look at some strategy behind our why. And if we do pivot, like 2020 has been a little bit of a pivot, then our whole entire staff knows why we do what we do and how we do it.
Thanks, Callie. And I will tell you, in looking at this particular slide, those who have joined us will see that there are some pictures at the bottom. And this was one of our immersion sessions where we were talking about our why. And you'll see that in our logo, we have a golden pair. And many of you were individuals that applied for a grant from us with our Golden Pair Awards this past summer. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But I will tell you that as we were developing some of the tools that we would utilize for the next phase of what AmFund would look like, our team got together so that they would understand that, you know what, we fund people's cause. No matter what that is, these are worthy organizations. You represent worthy organizations that need to have representation by an organization like ours that can help you raise those very essential dollars.
And it's great now because our entire staff can communicate that.
Exactly.
From the people who help with the facilities all the way to our CEO. Everyone knows our why.
Absolutely.
So you've done this great internal pivot. You've invested the time to train your staff, to train your storytellers. Now let's shout it from the rooftops. You have a committed team on board. It's time to let the world know. And specifically, I'm talking about your fundraising events and your fundraising pivot. You know, funds still must be raised to support the work your nonprofit's doing, even if that's involved a little bit of a shift in your programs and services, a little bit of a pivot. You're still doing critically important work. So you have to let the world know, and you have to tell them why. So throughout all of this, communication is key. People don't know what they don't know. I'll say that again. You don't know what you don't know. You have to tell them. This applies to the services you provide, the events you host, and the lives that right now are still being impacted thanks to your nonprofit. So again, communication is key. Shout it from the rooftops and you spread your why.
You know, Callie, as we're talking about this, I'm thinking about this whole time that we've had to begin to be more innovative, and with the opportunity for a virtual event as opposed to an in-person event. I dare say that everybody who is participating in this session has done galas and golf events and various things, and they can pretty much do that just without thinking. And there are some elements that are a carryover into virtual events, but then there are some things that are totally unique to the virtual event. Some of them I think that we will have learned about, that we will carry forward in the future. But one of the critical things I think that I have been so impressed with, and you've helped to teach me about, is the research that is available to us. So why don't we start there? Let's start with some of the research that needs to be done in order to have a successful event.
Oh, well, that is a great place to start. So being a nonprofit, there are many tools available to you that hopefully you know of, but maybe you don't. And really the tools I'm speaking of here are your analytics. So you likely have a website. Maybe it's hosted on a Wix or a WordPress. You likely have your Google listings, your Facebook, your social media. All of those different outlets have trackable, reportable analytics that go with them. Sometimes they're referred to as insights, other times they're referred to as analytics or reports, but all of these exist out there already. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You just have to take advantage of the tools that are being given to you. So for example, I just put up a quick snapshot of some analytics here. You'll see the users, the session, a bounce rate, the session duration. That is just a very small snapshot of some of the analytics that are offered to you. So really this helps you dive in to look at, one, who is looking at your website or social media posts. Where are they looking at your website or social media posts from? And I mean that in two ways. One, where in the country, where in the world, what location are they viewing you from? And two, are they looking at you on a desktop or mobile device? All of this information comes in these analytics that you can now tailor your posts, your blogs, and your organizational website to. You want to make sure you're looking at what time of day you're getting the most hits on your website or the most traction on your social media posts. And again, the demographics, because you'll want to identify your target market personas and really make sure that you're reaching them. You know, if people are logging on in the morning, you don't want to post at night. If people are logging on at night, you want to make sure you're posting at a time when your post will be shared, liked, and spread by the largest possible audience. So once you start diving into this research, you will just find so much data that you can apply to many different areas of your nonprofit, your fundraising, your marketing campaigns, if you do direct mail. I mean, this research is the starting place for all of the events and social media and moving forward, you really need to make sure you're capturing these analytics, maybe daily, maybe weekly, like we do.
I love to see those reports. The technology is so rich for what we need to do. And I think that probably choosing the right virtual event technology is highly critical for our success.
Oh, absolutely, Deborah. And in fact, we've invested a lot of time and resources and energy into doing our own research as far as event technologies go. And here we've listed, just some pretty key points to dive into before you sign up for your mobile bidding platform or your event hosting platform. I know a huge one is the PCI compliance, Deborah, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. And some of you may not know what that is, but AmFund developed its own auction platform recently, and so we learned a lot about PCI compliance. And as I said, there are a lot of organizations that are popping up that are presumed to be helpful to our nonprofit arena. And unfortunately, they may not have this PCI compliance designation. And what that does is it is a very, very strict accreditation process that an organization has to go through in order to capture the credit cards of your patrons when they're participating in a virtual auction or a virtual event, and you have your open ask and all of that. It's to protect that credit card information. And goodness knows, none of you need to have a situation where security card information was lost or stolen. So I cannot emphasize enough, the PCI compliance is really, really critical for you to look for.
Oh, absolutely. Because, typically people are used to attending a live event and writing a check and handing it over to you, and they know everything's safe. So it's just another level of security to make sure that your patrons keep on giving and that they feel comfortable giving. So that's something to look for. Then you'll definitely want to look, into the differences between mobile bidding platforms, event hosting platforms, and all the different capabilities they offer. We actually just published a blog on this yesterday as well. That's a really great checklist. So we'll make sure we get that over to you guys as well. Just, a list to run through when you're signing up for technology or when you're exploring different demos and having these explorative calls. You'll want to make sure you get your questions answered. So it's make sure you know what to ask to get them answered.
Excellent. Thank you, Callie. Appreciate knowing all about that. All right, so what's next? Well, you need to pick your date. And of course, just like when you're doing any kind of event, you want to make sure that you are not conflicting with something else that's big that's going on. You want to make absolutely certain that you remember the analytics that you checked into, because you need to know when people are going to make themselves available, particularly if you're doing like a live Facebook feed or a Zoom. What's their availability for a virtual event? Excuse me. It's so critical that you set the date appropriate to your patrons, and then set the goals for the event. And I don't just mean financial goals, although that is very, very important. You want to know what your target is, but you also want to know how many participants you want to draw in and how you're going to do that through your megaphone with your multiple opportunities through social media and various things. So you want to make sure that you set those goals. And then you want to talk about your sponsors. Now, I know that all of you, when you have a gala, you send out a sponsor opportunity. And that sponsor opportunity sometimes is, for $25,000, you will get a table for 10, and you will get a goodie bag, and you'll get your name splattered everywhere. You need to start thinking now, before you have your virtual event, what you're going to do for your sponsors. Callie, you and I have talked about this before, that we talk about innovation, there are some great opportunities out there for sponsors. One that I love is where the sponsors will gather about 15 people. Sometimes it's at their place of business, sometimes it's in one of their homes, and it could even be some of your patrons doing this, but they would have kind of a mini party around your live event. They might, didn't you tell me about a mini martini that they actually named in a theme?
Oh, absolutely. And it's great because one, it's total theme concept, and two, it's their own personal bubble. So they can make it as extravagant or as toned down as they want because it's their bubble. They feel safe. they don't have to worry about, attending a big 500-person gala right now.
Right, that's great. And I will tell you, when Callie talks about the 6 degrees of separation for all of those people that you know, the sponsors also are interested in your why. And what we're finding in the virtual arena is that a number of sponsors don't want to just be on a caption that says we gave $25,000 or we gave $10,000 for a particular sponsorship. What they want to be able to say is, we fed 1,000 children this year through a particular organization, or we rescued over 500 animals that were going to be exterminated. Those kind of things are critical, and they want to put that on their website, and that's the new megaphone for them as well. You may want to select honorees for your event, and that's fine too, but they also need to know your why, and they need to be able to articulate very easily why they are involved in your organization and why it's so impressive what you do. So again, everything that we talked about earlier, the why being so critical, you'll see that thread throughout everything that we do. The next thing on this list is the run of show. Now, I know that when we have large events that we have a run of show, and when people first started doing their virtual events, it was almost like, okay, let me just throw this against the wall and we'll see what happens. And you know what? What happened wasn't as good as it should have been. It was a disastrous pivot. And so you need to have a run of show. It needs to go step by step by step as to what is going to happen at your virtual event. And we, Callie, I know that you've seen it. We have actually created a run of show template that's available to our nonprofit partners. And it's a step-by-step opportunity to see exactly what you need to do as part of the run of show. I think that you've seen that and used that. Does it make a difference?
Oh, absolutely. Not only for you on the back end planning, but the live event portion makes all the difference for your patrons with a nice laid out run of show.
And then your MC for the event. I will tell you that the next one, it talks about a live or a look live event. And I really do advocate for the look live event, because then you've got more control over what you're doing. I saw an event recently, and I was really disappointed because the MC for that particular one decided that he was just going to dress down, and he was actually in a hoodie, and he didn't know what the why of the organization was that he was emceeing for. And I don't exactly know if he was a last minute fill-in or not, but I will tell you that if you don't have somebody who can really look into that camera and appeal to the audience, whatever that audience may be, however large it is or however small it is, because it's usually recorded and again repeated to your patrons over a larger course of time, you have to have the right MC. And for the Look Live event, it's more opportunity to control the messaging and to make absolutely certain that if your sponsors have a spot to speak, or an advertisement from your sponsors, or if the honorees have an opportunity to speak, that it's crafted very carefully. I will tell you, there are a number of things on television today that you would think are live events, and they are not. They are look live. And so I just highly recommend that. In the world that we live in right now, with the technology and the virtual tools, that can be very, very enhancing to your virtual event. And then, of course, your open ask. The open ask has always been critical to your fundraising opportunities and needs. And you don't just say, give me your money. And I know that everybody on this session knows what I'm talking about. It is more about your why and what you're doing with that open ask. Give people an opportunity to be very specific about what their dollars will do. Determine exactly how much, let's say $25 will feed a family this week, or $500 will go to save the rivers in the Northeast. There are so many different organizations that we have supported, and they tell us with the unrestricted funds that they utilize, that they are able to do things like put roofs on the buildings and things like that. There are so many needs out there for our nonprofit organizations, and to continue with their cause, the open ask is a critical component even in the virtual event. So don't overlook that, and don't overlook the necessity of relating it back to your why and what the results are of supporting that why. And then there's the silent auction. You know, we have loved doing silent auctions. We've done live auctions when we started out years ago, and we evolved a little bit, still doing some live auctions, but the silent auctions were so fun, Callie. When we were there in person, it was so much fun. And I know that people enjoy that interaction as part of the silent auction. But a virtual event does not eliminate that opportunity. I'm really excited because AmFund has just recently, as I said earlier, implemented our own platform for a silent auction, and it can be so great. One of the things that you need to remember is not to assume that somebody's going to have two phones in their hand and they're looking at your live event and they're also bidding on a silent auction platform. We're going to talk about that on the next slide, but I will tell you that the silent auction can really garner great support for your organization. And so don't discount it and don't take it away from your event. One of the most critical points, and you'll see that I've got this all in caps, and I don't mean to be screaming, but I am screaming. It is so important. Do not forget your donors that need to be tutored in this new world of virtual events. And the reason I say that is that I can remember last summer when we were beginning to do more of the virtual events, and there were so many things that we were learning as a result. And I will tell you that so many of your donors have no idea how to approach a cell phone and bid on something or respond to an open ask. And it's just necessary for you to give them the opportunity to know exactly what's ahead, what is expected of them, and how they function. I know that we've provided a step-by-step guide for our nonprofit partners to share with their patrons, their donors, and their staff. And you know what? We encourage all of you to do that, because it's a real lost opportunity if someone is just too fearful to interact. And I know, Callie, that you've worked with one of our nonprofit partners closely, and I think that they may even have an example of what they did.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, Gilda's Club of Middle Tennessee is one of our longtime nonprofit partners now, and they just finished up hosting their Gilda's Club Red Door Bash, which, surprise, this year went virtual. So they allowed me to share this with you all today. This is what we called their Know Before You Go. So this is a little flyer that was emailed out to all of the event attendees, all registrants, to let them know, hey, you registered, but now what do you do? So just think back to the days when we were able to attend those fabulous 500-person black tie galas, and we were so excited to get all dressed up. And then you realize, oh my gosh, there's construction on the way there. I don't know where to park. Where's the valet? Now I'm 15 minutes late. Where do I go for the coat check? All of that information that you would provide to patrons arriving for your in-person event, you need to translate virtually and make sure you allow the patrons who registered for your virtual event to, quote unquote, arrive on time as well. So this obviously looks different virtually, but it contains the same key elements. Where do you go? When do you go?
Jason Boomer.
No, dude, I'm gonna show you Boomer.
Sorry, I'm gonna mute the crowd really quick. Apologize for that. So you say, where do you go? When do you log on? Is there a cocktail hour? Is there an auction? But most importantly, who do I call if I have questions? So many people have, like Deborah said, have never logged onto their cell phone to bid on an auction item or participated in a virtual event. So you need to make sure that you have a point person who can either help with the technology, help them bid, register their credit card. All this information needs to be given to them ahead of time. So that's why we call it a know before you go. Again, this might be your donor's first time participating in a virtual event. You want to make sure you make it as easy for them as possible.
Easy, easy, easy.
Absolutely. And with this know before you go, comes all of that super important pre-marketing that has to be done, just like you would do for your in-person event. You have to send out the invitations. You have to invite people. They have to know why you're doing this event. So the pre-marketing is key. Now, we like to say, ideally, in a perfect world, you would want to start this marketing no later than 6 weeks out. Does that mean you can't do it sooner?
I will tell you, I had someone yesterday who said, "Oh, we're 4 weeks away from the date that we want to do our event. Can we still do it?" Yes, but you know what? You're going to have to increase the amount of marketing that you do, and it can be done ideally 6 weeks.
Absolutely. And with that research we mentioned in the beginning of these slides, with the analytics, with Facebook and Google, you really want to have that ideal marketing schedule created. So you've looked at, when your patrons log on, when they're most engaged. Is it AM? Is it PM? Do you have a bigger audience on the weekends versus the weeknights? So you want to use all of those analytics you gathered when you were doing your pre-event planning, and you want to translate that into a marketing schedule. Now, again, this is key that you have a schedule and that your schedule be somewhat flexible, because you don't want your message to get lost with holidays or Veterans Day or Memorial Day, anything like that. You want to make sure you don't get lost in the noise. So you want to post often, but again, you want to be strategic about when you're posting. So that marketing schedule is key. And again, I want to point out, take advantage of the tools that are provided to you, like Facebook's live feature. Did you know that when you go live, all of your followers, all of the individuals who like your Facebook page get a notification? Even if they're not on Facebook, it gives them a notification to say, hey, Momentum Nonprofit Partners just went live. So take advantage of that tool. Many nonprofits have even filmed little behind the scenes clips to show their staff getting ready for the Look Live, or their green screen, or maybe they're even wrapping up auction items in their office. So show some of that footage, go live and give a little sneak peek at the behind the scenes of your big virtual fundraising event.
All of those opportunities help. They absolutely do.
And so again, this brings us back to social media. Besides knowing that you need to communicate your pivotal new virtual event, you need to know when and where to share this information. So that goes back to your analytics and all the research that you've done. I'd like to remind you all of the rule of 7. If you've been in sales or marketing, you've probably heard the rule of 7, that consumers have to actually see something 7 times in front of them before they take action. The same goes for your post. You can't just do one event post and say, oh, okay, we posted, we're done. What, you didn't see it? Why didn't you register? No, you actually need to be in front of them at least 7 times. I recommend much more if you have a 6-week timeline, to let them know about your event. Tell them what you told them, and tell them again. Don't worry about posting too much. You think you're posting too much? You're not. You need to get your message out there. Social media is key to do that. So there's just a few of the social media icons up there. Hopefully we're all taking advantage of Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. You'll definitely want to be posting on those platforms. There's even tools that help you post on all of them at once, like Buffer and Hootsuite, that help you schedule your postings so you don't have to put so much work into it. It takes care of it for you. Remember, when you are scheduling these posts, you want to include a call to action. You need to include your event link. Don't just say, oh, you saw our previous post with the event link. No, link it again. Take advantage of those hashtags, create fun ones for your virtual event. Philanthropic, people can share pictures if they're philanthropic, all kinds of fun hashtags to make sure that you're trending and your posts to get up there in those search results.
And even prepping for those events, the photographs that your patrons do. We saw one that they were doing a mask contest, how glamorous they could make masks to be worn at the event. So I have to tell you, there's a lot of fun stuff out there that you can do from a social media standpoint that can also lead to your event, along with the hashtags for the pictures.
Oh, and that's critical. You know, those pictures of the fun contest or the martini drink we mentioned earlier, those are trendy, those are shareable. People like those super easily. And, you know, as we talked about earlier, training your storytellers, those are your ambassadors. And we like to say that, you know, they're worth their weight in gold. Their likes, shares, follows, and subscribes are what keep us going and what create those 6 degrees of separation. How one of your followers in Bismarck, North Dakota can share your post. Now it suddenly has a huge audience of, let's say, their cousins in Atlanta, Georgia, who like the post. And now because they liked it, their uncle in San Francisco is seeing it. So the power of a post is huge. And just remember that. Take advantage of your hashtags, your call to action, all those critically important points in prepping and sharing for your virtual event.
Thanks, Callie. And so finally, remember to enjoy the success of your hard work. And more than anything, I would say be gentle with yourself. All of this is new. There's some learning technologies and innovative ways to fundraise. And I will tell you that I believe that the virtual event is now part of our annual calendar for fundraising. Even once we start doing in-person events again, I believe that the virtual event will continue because it is something that we're learning is just as effective in so many ways. And I do recommend a post-event meeting to discuss your successes and areas for improvement and see, you know, how much more you can raise through a virtual event. You'll always be planting a seed for your next event. So, Callie, I would like to first of all say thank you to everybody for joining us. We are going to open the chat feature to allow individuals to ask us questions. We know that we promised that we would stay within a 45-minute time frame. And so what we would like to do is to invite you on the chat to ask us questions. And if there are too many questions for the time that we have left, which is only about 5 more minutes, we will send you answers to your questions. Just email us. We're available. Our phone number is 407-895-8000. Again, our phone number is 407-895-8000. And our web address is amfund.org, amfund.org. And we're more than happy to assist you as you're working with your virtual event.